Tonight we'll be picking up in Mark chapter 8. Mark chapter 8, verse 1 says, "In those days, the multitude being very great, and having nothing to eat, Jesus called his disciples unto him, and saith unto them, I have compassion on the multitude, because they now have been with me 3 days, and have nothing to eat. And if I send them away fasting to their own houses, they will faint by the way, for the divers of them came far." Okay, so we see here that the multitude is continuing to grow. Now, evidently Jesus has been teaching for 3 days, and they've stayed there. I don't imagine that they've eaten anything. The way I read it, they're already in a fast. And it's been 3 days, and he knows what the disciples are going to say. Why don't we just send them home? Why don't we just go ahead and send them home? But then he says many of them came from a long way off. So they've been following Jesus for a long ways. They've got nothing to eat, and he shows his compassion. We got to feed them. We got to do something. And his disciples answered, "From whence can a man satisfy these men with bread here in the wilderness?" And he asked them, "How many loaves have ye?" And they said 7. Now, these same disciples were just present when he fed 5,000. Remember? And we already see the doubt. It's only been a short span of time since that happened. I don't think I'd ever forget that.
No. You think not?
But they question, how are we going to feed these people? How are we going to satisfy them with just bread? And Jesus asked them, "How many loaves?" And they said 7. Okay, that number is important. That's the number of perfection and completion. I don't think it's ironic that they had 7 loaves. I think they had 7 loaves for a specific purpose. And he commanded the people to sit down on the ground, and he took the 7 loaves and gave thanks and brake it, and gave it to the disciples to set before them. And they did set them before the people. Okay, so they've got to be having flashbacks. Like deja vu, wouldn't you think?
You would think.
Didn't we just do this? And Jesus went right through the same steps. He told them to sit down, except then when he fed the 5,000, he told them to sit rank and file, remember? In companies or groups, if you would. And now he just told them to sit down. He didn't separate them. He just told them to sit down, did the same thing. He gave thanks for what they had and broke it and gave it to the disciples to divvy out among the people. Now look. And they had a few small fishes. Now see, a lot of people get this confused with the other story. But the other story, it plainly states that he fed 5,000. This is going to be a different number here. So ironically, they have the same thing. They have bread and they have a few small fishes. And he blessed and commanded them to set before them also. Now, I wonder who the they were. You think it was the disciples that had the fish? Now, why didn't they go ahead and mention that to start with? Now, Jesus said, "How many loaves do you have?" But right before that, the disciples said, "How are we going to satisfy them with just bread?" It's almost like they were keeping the fish to themselves. You see that? That's what I pick up on that. Because if it's the disciples that had the fish, why didn't they say, "Well, look, just a few weeks ago, that boy with 2 loaves and 5 fishes, we fed the multitude, remember? Now we've got 7 loaves and we got a few more fish. What can we do?" But they immediately said, "Well, how are we going to satisfy them with bread?" It's almost like if you come over to my house and I've got 3 big ribeyes, and there's me, Crystal, and Emma, those are our ribeyes, and they'll be like, "How am I going to feed these people with this macaroni and cheese?" You know what I'm saying? I'm keeping this ribeye to myself. I'm not sharing it. That's what they're saying.
That's what it sounds like.
That's what I pick up on. So why in the world are they so selfish? So he broke it, or he prayed over them and commanded them to do the same thing. So they did eat and were filled. And they took up the broken meat that was left, was 7 baskets. There's that number again. 7 loaves. And there was a remainder of 7 baskets full of meat and bread. And they that had eaten were about 4,000, and then he sent them away. There's a little deepness into that right there too. He didn't just send them away. He satisfied their need and then sent them away. He would not have been showing any compassion had he just sent them away. But he satisfied their need. He fed them spiritually first for the 3 days that he was teaching. And now he's just performed a miracle in front of them. And now he's fed them exactly what they needed with leftovers. And in straightway or immediately he entered into a ship with his disciples and came into the parts of Dalmutha. Now, I wonder what's running through. We're not privy to the information here, but I wonder what's going through the disciples' minds. I mean, do you think they're even thinking about their selfishness to start with? Now, granted, they just saw him do this with the fish. They knew that there was going to be leftovers. So why would they hold it back? We do that too sometimes, don't we? We have a gift that God's given us, and sometimes we hold that back. Like we think we're going to be extra special if we have that, if we maintain that gift to ourselves. Like if I have the ability to witness to someone, I'm like, no, it's okay. I don't have enough time. Knowing I've got all the time in the world, but I don't have enough time. Let somebody else do it. So here they're just holding back. Jesus has already taught them. What else do they need? We're going to eat these fish for ourselves. And the Pharisees came forth and began to question with him, seeking of him a sign from heaven, tempting him. And he sighed deeply in his spirit and saith, Why doeth this generation seek after a sign? Verily I say unto you, there shall no sign be given unto this generation. They wanted proof. They wanted to believe, I think, but they wanted proof. They didn't want to exercise any faith. They wanted a sign. Have you ever said that? Lord, if it's your will, just give me a sign. Gideon did that, didn't he? Gideon asked for that sign and the Lord gave it to him. But oftentimes we're like Gideon. We're like, are you sure, Lord, if that's truly what you want, do it the opposite way? Because that could have just been, I think he told him to wet the ground and leave the fleece dry the first time. And that could have just been chance. So Gideon says, okay, ground's wet, fleece is dry. So now he says, just wet the fleece and leave the ground dry. They wanted a sign. Gideon wanted to be sure. And there's nothing wrong with being sure what God wants, but when he gives you that sign, run with it. But here, this was much more than just carrying out his will. This was, prove to me who you are. He says, I'm not going to give you a sign. If my work, basically what he's saying is, if my profession is not enough, then I'm not going to give you a sign. I mean, how many signs has he already given them? A lot. I mean, how many miracles has he already performed? A bunch. And he left them and entered into the ship again and departed to the other side. Now the disciples had forgotten to take bread. Neither had they in the ship with them more than one loaf. And he charged them, saying, Take heed, beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and of the leaven of Herod. And they reasoned among them, saying, It is because we have no bread. Okay, so they're thinking that Jesus is talking about eating their bread. Okay, he's not talking about eating their bread. He's talking about what the Pharisees and Herod is adding to. A little bit of leaven leavens the whole lump. Here, that's what he's talking about. And when Jesus knew it, he saith unto them, Why reason ye because you have no bread? Perceive you not, neither understand? Have ye in your heart yet hardened? He's not talking about physical bread. He's talking about what the Pharisees, remember we talked last week about the traditions and stuff they were adding? That's what he's alluding to. But the disciples were worried about bread. This is the third time they're worried about food. First time was when he fed the multitude of 5,000. Because one of them said, What, do you want us to go into town and spend what we have to buy food for these people? And then this time they said, we just have bread. And then it comes to light that they have fish. And now here they are. What happened to the 7 baskets?
Yeah, what did?
Because this
They
is,
didn't take any to the ship.
yeah, where did we go? We went from, Jesus entered his ship with his disciples and came into the parts of Dalmutha, and the Pharisees came forth and questioned Jesus. He told them there wasn't going to be a sign. They got right back in the boat and went to the other side. Why would they leave the 7 baskets? Are you seriously telling me that he has to instruct them everything to do?
Sounds like it.
Because the first miracle, he told them to take the baskets with them. Remember? But here he didn't mention that, so they just left them laying there. I don't know about you, but if we don't have any, there was only 7 loaves between them to start with. And they know they just gave that up. They don't have any bread. But where did this one loaf come
Well, you don't know how long it took them to get from point A to point B.
from? I don't think it was
I
that
know
long.
it's a straight away, but
Well, that was immediately after it was over, they got in the boat and pushed off.
Yeah, it says they took no more than 1 loaf.
Why would they do that? Why would they leave, let's just say 6 baskets?
Where would they get the loaf from?
Yeah.
I think
Maybe
the
they
other
left
question-
one.
Or maybe that loaf was in the boat. But regardless, they left a blessing behind. And now that's what they're worried about. They had forgotten. I don't know how about if something like that happens to me and there's a basket left of miracle bread, if you will, that miracle bread's going to go with me everywhere. You can use that. Y'all wouldn't believe what Jesus just did. Look, here's the evidence. But immediately, they were worried about how much food they had. It's almost like now they've forgotten twice that Jesus has multiplied what he had. And he's warned them, having eyes you see not, and having ears you hear not, and do you not remember? That's got to be bad when Jesus poses that question. Don't you remember? And look what he goes back to. He goes back to the 5 loaves, automatically to the first. Hold on, I was about to sneeze. He goes automatically back to the first miracle that he multiplied the food. He says, don't you remember when I break the 5 loaves among the 5,000? And how many baskets full of fragments took you up? And they say unto him, 12. And when the 7 among the 4,000, how many baskets full of fragments did you take up? And they said, 7. And he said unto them, how is it that you do not understand? These disciples are just crazy, aren't they? He laughed, but we all do the same thing. We do the same thing in life, and it's. I don't think I'll ever understand it, but I think I'll continue to do it because it's just in our nature. That's just who we are. We forget how God has taken care of us up to this point, and then when something arises, we need that reminder. When we think the disciples would have it a little bit easier than we did. I mean, we look at them like, man, they were right with him. They saw this stuff. They had the evidence in their hands. And Jesus is like, how don't you understand what's going on here? You think they needed that reminder. Every now and then we need that same reminder. Now, I don't think we need to be told to take the basket with us. Sometimes we do that, don't we? Take that basket with you. And he cometh to Bethsaida, and they bring a blind man unto him, and besought him to touch him. And he took the blind man by the hand, and led him out of the town. And when he had spit on his eyes, and put his hands on him, he asked him if he saw aught or anything. So once again, he has taken him away from the multitude. You see this? And he looked up and said, I see men as trees walking And after that, he put his hands upon his eyes, and he made him look up, and he was restored and saw every man clearly. Okay, what was going on in verse 24 was still foggy. He still had blurred vision. He saw men, but they looked like trees that were moving. It was blurry. So, why immediately didn't his eyesight come back?
I think it was because they had already shown that
Okay.
by the occasion with the fishes and the loaves.
Okay, so there's some doubt there. So what about this guy?
He's not.
Now, we don't know how long he's been blinded. We don't know if he's just been blinded for a few years, or he's been blind his whole life.
Well, you do, because he saw them as trees, okay? If he had never seen, how would he know that they were trees?
See, that's what I was doing. That was intentional. There's context clues for a reason. That's why. This guy has evidently seen before. So we're saying here that his vision was blurry. Do you think God was testing his faith? Even this blind man?
Possibly.
Because here's how I probably would have responded. If I'm blind and Jesus comes and spits on my eyes and I can see, and I'm like, well, thanks, but it ain't any better, really. But this guy responded and said, you know what? I can see. It's a little bit blurry, but I can see. There was some positive. I take that statement as a positive statement, not like, I can see, but it's still blurry. I think Jesus read into his response that he was satisfied with whatever the master had done for him. He was satisfied. So when he saw that satisfactory statement or response, he says, you know what? He touched his eyes again. That guy demonstrated faith that this must be what Jesus wanted for me. So I'm going to be comfortable with this. I mean, he hadn't seen for however long it's been. Now he can make out some stuff. Vicki, you can relate because you have a hard time seeing. Now, if you were totally blind and Jesus gave you the vision that you have now, you'd probably be satisfied with that. I can say that because I know her spirit. She would be satisfied with that. That's where this man is at. He's been blinded, but now he's got cloudy vision, and he's okay with it. So Jesus says, all right, I'm fixing to show everybody here. I'm going to show you, because of your faith, watch this, you can see clearly. And he sent him away to his house, saying, and here he goes again, don't tell nobody. Neither go into the town, nor tell it to any in the town. I still think there's an overwhelming tiredness that Jesus is experiencing. Now, I don't know about you, but if my sight's restored, I'm going to have a hard time keeping that a secret. So Jesus tells him to just keep it to yourself. I need a break. And Jesus left, and his disciples into the towns of Caesarea Philippi, and went by the way. And by the way, he asked his disciples, saying to them, who do men say that I am? All right, so he's getting a progress report, or he's getting a gossip report, really. His disciples are out, and they're mixing in with this multitude. I don't imagine Jesus teaching and the 12 disciples standing up there with Jesus in the middle like this. I think they're in the multitude as well, gaining the same instruction. So they're mixed in, and they're hearing the conversations. They've been going out in separate places. They're hearing what the talk is about Jesus, and Jesus knows what people are saying, but he's questioning his disciples. And they answered, and look at the responses. John the Baptist, but some say Elijah, and others, just one of the prophets. And he saith unto them, but who do you say that I am? And Peter answered and said unto him, thou art the Christ. What does that show about Peter's faith? It's firm. It's solid. Think about it. We don't know how many people that they've been in at least a multitude of 5,000 and 4,000, just men. So if you figured the men were married, that's 10,000. Maybe they had a kid, that's 15,000 at least. And in this multitude, that's 4, 8, 12,000. There's a bunch of people there. And sometimes when talk gets big, we tend to go with what the popular vote is. I think that's what Jesus was testing. You've heard all these things. This is what the people are saying. What do you say? I think he's testing the disciples to see how firm and solid they are in who he is. And Jesus answered with Peter answered with the most powerful response, "Thou art the Christ." And he charged them, did I read that right? And he charged them that they should tell no man of him. What? Did you see that? Now, I thought we were supposed to share the gospel. He hadn't given that instruction yet, has he? I think he's gonna let the gossip, if you will, or the spread of the gospel go about through the people. And he knows that the Pharisees are after him. He knows that they are trying to foil his plan. So maybe just for a moment, he's testing his disciples in their obedience to his commands. And then just maybe he wants to see what the people are going to do, how they're going to respond. And he began to teach them that the Son of Man, see, here he goes. He's breaking into why, I think. He begins to teach them that the Son of Man must suffer many things and be rejected of the elders and of the chief priests and scribes and be killed and after 3 days rise again. Okay, this has got to be an alarming shock to the disciples. This is the first news they've heard of this. What do you mean? And he spake that saying openly, and Peter took him, good old Peter, huh? Peter took him and began to rebuke him. But when he had turned about and looked on his disciples, he rebuked Peter, saying, Get thee behind me, Satan, for thou savorest not the things that be of God, but the things that be of men. And when he had called the people unto him with his disciples also, he said unto them, Whosoever will come after me, let him deny himself, take up his cross, and follow me. All right, so where did Satan even come into this picture here?
When Jesus rebuked Peter.
So I'm thinking that Satan was guiding Peter to rebuke Jesus. Now Peter just said, Thou art the Christ. And then Jesus reveals prophecy that's fixing to happen to him. And Peter's like, hold on, Jesus, you've lost your mind. You're talking crazy. They're going to kill you? And you're going to rise again on the third day? Come on. I mean, the miracles you've done are outrageous and just amazing. But they're going to kill you and you're going to rise again from the third day? Satan was in the midst, casting doubt in Peter's mind. He just was bold enough to say, You art the Christ. I know who you are. But then Satan got in there somewhere and caused a little bit of doubt in Peter and caused him to question what Jesus was saying, and then caused Peter to rebuke Jesus, saying, You've lost your mind. You're crazy. This is not going to happen. Whether it be the resurrection or the killing of him. I think, because how Peter was in the garden when Jesus was arrested. Peter was going to fight for Jesus till the death. I think Peter has always had that desire to be a protector over Jesus, and he just has that characteristic I see in his writings and in the stories that he's mentioned in, I see Peter being a leader and a caretaker of those who he is leading. So maybe he's saying, Lord, stop that. You know there's 12 of us. We're not going to let them get you. Or maybe he's doubting the statement that Jesus just made. Either way, I think Satan was in control here. And Jesus acknowledged it and said, Satan, get behind thee. Get behind me. Now he called the disciples unto him and all the multitude and said, whosoever will follow after me or come after me, let him deny himself, take up his cross, and follow me. For whosoever will save his life shall lose it. But whosoever shall lose his life for my sake and the gospel's, the same shall save it. What is he saying? There might come a day when you have to sacrifice your life for me and for this gospel. For what shall it profit a man if he shall gain the whole world and lose his own soul? There's many out there today that have sold their soul to the mighty dollar. They'll do whatever they can do to gain another dollar. Now, we understand that we have to have money to survive. There's nothing wrong with having money. But when money becomes more important than anything else in your life, it's an idol. Anything that's more important than God in your life, that is an idol. It can be money, it can be a vehicle, it can be a home, it can be children, it can be family. Anything you put before God is an idol. That's what he's saying here. You're not going to gain anything if you do everything for profit and lose your soul. Or what shall a man give in exchange for his soul? What's your soul worth? That's what he's asking. What would you give for your soul? I don't have anything to give that would pay the debt that my soul owes. I don't. It says, whosoever therefore shall be ashamed of me and of my words in this adulterous and sinful generation, of him also shall the Son of Man be ashamed, when he cometh in the glory of his Father with the holy angels. Okay, is this not where we're at today? An adulterous and sinful generation? Are there not people ashamed of Jesus and his words? I mean, we're trying to take him out of everything. We don't want to say the Pledge of Allegiance because it says one nation under God. We don't want to pray anymore. Why? And we say it's because we don't want to offend nobody. But in essence, it's just being ashamed. Then that means if we do those things, that God will be ashamed of us. I'd hate to know that feeling. Because I know when I let my earthly father down, and I knew that he was ashamed, and that hurt so bad. But all he did was give me life. He can't give me eternal life. He never died for my sins. So to be ashamed, to have God be ashamed of you, man, that hurts. And I can't believe we made it all the way through 8. That hurts, doesn't it? So what is he trying to get across to the disciples here? I think he's telling them that the trouble is coming. And a decision is going to be required. And I believe that the disciples have decided to follow Jesus, all but one. Well, Judas has decided to follow Jesus, but only in flesh. He hasn't decided to follow him in spirit. So he's telling them that trouble is coming. And I need you to be prepared and be bold enough to always proclaim that I am the Messiah. Regardless of what the world throws at you, do not be ashamed of the gospel. Any questions on 8? All right, we'll move on. We'll do a little bit of 9. Okay? And he said unto them, Verily I say unto you, that there be some of them that stand here, which shall not taste of death, till they have seen the kingdom of God come with power. And after 6 days Jesus taketh with him Peter, James, and John, and leadeth them up into a high mountain apart by themselves, and he was transfigured before them. Okay, what does that mean?
Means that he's got a holy light.
Okay, he let go of the flesh for a brief time, and they saw him, Jesus, in his holiness. And his raiment became shining, exceeding white as snow, so as no fuller on earth can white them. All right, there was nothing whiter on earth that these people had ever seen. And there appeared unto them Elijah and Moses, and they were talking with Jesus. And Peter answered and said to Jesus, Master, it is good for us to be here. And let us make 3 tabernacles, one for thee, one for Moses, and one for Elijah. For he wist not what to say, for they were sore afraid. Now, why would they want to make a tabernacle for Moses and Elijah? Wasn't nothing special about Moses and Elijah, was there?
Well,
Maybe.
there was. But
Well, there was, but there wasn't nothing holy. No need to build a tabernacle and worship them.
yeah,
Peter didn't know what to say. He was afraid, not afraid like these ghosts are going to get me, but he just didn't know what to say. He couldn't understand what was going on. And there was a cloud that overshadowed them, and a voice came out of the cloud saying, This is my beloved Son, hear him. All right, now why didn't God just appear? Because nobody can look upon God, right? No man has seen God. Okay, so this cloud appears. I wonder if it was the same cloud that led the children of Israel. I'm pretty sure that it was. So this cloud appeared and saying, Listen, this is my beloved Son, hear what he has to say. And suddenly, when they had looked round about, they saw no man anymore, save Jesus, only with themselves. Okay, so the cloud is gone. I wonder if they were looking for that voice. I mean, the cloud rolls up and you hear, This is my Son. Who said that? And they're looking around, and now all of a sudden the cloud's gone. Moses and Elijah's gone. The only people standing there are Jesus, Peter, James, and John. Imagine this experience when they come down and talk to the other disciples. It says, And they came down from the mountain, and he charged them that they should tell no man what things they had seen, till the Son of Man was risen from the dead. Okay, so they're supposed to keep this a secret. That's going to be hard to do, isn't it? I mean, you go up on the mountain, and you've heard about Moses, how he let people free. You heard about Elijah, how he prophesied and told of future events, and how he did not taste death. You've heard these, and now you've seen them. And not only did you see them, you saw Jesus white as snow, and a cloud spoke to you.
the amazing thing is that they knew who Moses and Elijah were.
Yeah, they knew who they were. How did they know that? None of them ever saw Moses and Elijah. You think they had name tapes on Moses?
Hello, my name is.
Yeah. So he charged until the Son of Man was risen from the dead. So they're supposed to keep this a secret until 3 days after the crucifixion, right? And they kept that saying with themselves, questioning one another with the rising from the dead, what the rising from the dead should mean. Okay, why do you think they kept that secret?
Because nobody would believe it.
Yeah.
They're all going to be committed to an insane asylum if they share that. That's my thought. Because we've already seen them question Jesus so many times during the brief span that they've been with him. And everybody that Jesus is told to be quiet, except for the blind man, has gone back and shared. Now here's Peter, James, and John, and they've just experienced this. I'm probably not going to tell anybody either. Whether the Lord said not to or not, I'm probably not, because people are going to check me into the lighthouse in Conway. Huh? Their only question with each other was, what does the rising from the dead mean? I think they just put the mountaintop experience in the back of their mind. They figure if they don't think about it, maybe they'll just forget about it. But what did he mean by the rising from the dead? And they asked him, saying, what say the scribes that Elijah must first come? And he answered and told them, Elijah verily cometh first, and restoreth all things. And how it is written of the Son of Man, that he must suffer many things, and be set at naught. But I say unto you that Elijah is indeed come, and they have done unto him whatsoever they listed, as it was written of him. Basically, he just said prophecy is being fulfilled. Right before your very eyes, prophecy is being fulfilled. And this is one of my favorite passages here. And when he came to his disciples, okay, so Peter, James, and John are on the mountain with Jesus. The rest of the disciples he left in town, right? Okay. And when he came to his disciples, he saw a great multitude about them, and the scribes were questioning them. And straightway all the people, when they beheld him, were greatly amazed, running to him, saluted him, or greeted. They didn't give like a military salute, they greeted him. So they immediately, when they saw Jesus, they ran. And when they asked the scribes, what question ye with them? So Jesus sees them talking to the disciples, questioning them, and he asked the scribes, what are you questioning them about? What's the problem? What's going on here? And one of the multitude answered and said, Master, I have brought unto thee my son, which hath a dumb spirit. And wheresoever he taketh him, he teareth him, and he foameth and gnasheth with his teeth, and pineth away. And I spake to the disciples that they should cast him out, and they could not. You see that? The disciples were already given the power, I believe in chapter 4 or 5. They were given the power to cast out the demons, to do the very same thing that Jesus was doing. Remember?
Yep.
What happened? He left them in this town, didn't take the power with him, didn't take it away from the disciples. We see no mention of that. But here are the disciples now. This man has brought their child, and the demon can't be cast out. And he answered him and saith, O faithless generation, how long shall I be with you? How long shall I suffer you? Bring him unto me. And they brought him unto him, and when he saw him, straightway the spirit tear him, and he fell on the ground and wallowed foaming. All right, so this child has been thrown to the ground by the spirit that's inside of him, and he's foaming at the mouth. Why? Because he saw Jesus. And he asked his father, how long is it ago since this came unto him? So how long has it been since this has been going on? And he said, of a child. So this has been going on for years. And oftentimes it hath cast him into a fire and into the waters to destroy him. But if thou canst do anything, have compassion on us and help us. So this demon, this spirit, is trying everything it can do to kill this child. It's thrown him into fire, it's thrown him into water. And the man says, if you can do anything, have compassion on us. He didn't say heal the child. He just said have compassion and help us. And Jesus said unto him, if thou can believe, all things are possible to him that believe. And straightway the father of the child cried out and said with tears, Lord, I believe, help thou my unbelief. He didn't say, help thou my child, did he? And would you not, if your child was in this predicament, would you not be cared about your child first? He understood what Jesus was saying. I can't do it unless you believe. So he acknowledges his belief, but the statement, that should have been enough. Lord, I believe, period. That should have been enough. But I think this man had the insight to know that days of unbelief may come after this. Have we ever been there? Lord, I believe in you, and I know you can do this. But then something will come up in our life, and we'll say, Lord, I know the Lord ain't going to deal with this. It's too small, or it's too big for him. I think this man had the foresight to know that there will be days ahead when unbelief will come. So he's saying, Lord, I believe, but help me with my unbelief. When Jesus saw that the people came running together, he rebuked the foul spirit, saying unto him, Thou dumb and deaf spirit, I charge thee, come out of him, and enter no more into him. And the spirit cried and rent him, and tore him, cut him, sore, and came out of him, and he was as one dead, insomuch that many said, He is dead. Evidently, this was a violent removal of the spirit. This spirit gave up a fight, or put up a fight to leave this child's body. And it drained this child. Well, imagine how tired this kid's body had to be. I mean, just at will, he would just fall down foaming at the mouth. He's been fighting this spirit since he was a baby. He's got to be wore out. The demon leaves and the kid falls down, and so much as the people say he's dead. Then Jesus took him by the hand and lifted him up, and he arose. And he was coming to the house. His disciples asked him privately. You think they didn't want any public embarrassment? Why didn't they run up to Jesus when he first showed up with the rest of the multitude and say, Lord, look, we got a problem. This man's brought his child over here, and we cannot get this demon out. They didn't do that, did they? They waited till that is all said and done. And then privately, why could we not cast him out? And he said unto them, This kind can come forth by nothing but prayer and fasting. Evidently, they had gotten comfortable with the power that he had given them, and they began to believe that it was what they were doing and not what God was doing. You ever seen those people? God gives them a gift to do something. And they may be and I'm just going to use a musician. They may be the greatest musician, and when they first started leading music or singing, man, they would pray about what God would have them to sing and where he would have them to sing. And all of a sudden, they get a lot of accolades and claps from the congregations. And they're like, look at me, I can sing well. And then as time moved on, they quit praying about what songs they would sing, what churches they would go sing at. And the next thing you know, they can't carry a tune in a bucket. They're not praying about it and seeking God's will in the things that they're doing. That's what happened to the disciples. They've cast out 4 or 5 demons apiece, and they've healed some sick. Look what we can do. Look what we're doing. We have the ability. There's no need to pray. God's given us the ability. You know what would happen if I didn't pray? Man, it's already bad enough. I can't imagine how bad it'd be if I didn't pray and prepare. Even though I believe God has given me the ability, I still think I need to draw the rest of the strength that I have to do what I do from him. And the only way to do that is through prayer and fasting. He reminded the disciples, it's not of your power, but it's of what I give you. And they departed thence and passed through Galilee, and he would not that any man should know it. He didn't want nobody to know where they were going. For he taught his disciples and said unto them, The Son of Man is delivered into the hands of men, and they shall kill him, and after he is killed, he shall rise the 3rd day. He's driving this point home one more time. Isn't that what he said at the start of chapter 8? Yeah, he said that at the start of chapter 8. Yeah. or somewhere in there. In chapter 8, he told them that. So here he is, he's driving it home again. And they still don't understand. But they understood not that saying and were afraid to ask him. Now they've already been told and explained one time, right? They don't want to ask twice. That's like if the boss man tells you to do something, gives you a list of 2 or 3 things to do, breaks it down and tells you, man, I don't want to go back over there and ask him, what did you say again? Can you explain that to me one more time? Even though me going over there may save me some work and may save some money, because I don't want to get the "I done told you once" deal, I'm going to not go over there. I'm going to try to remember. And I guarantee you I'm going to mess one of those 2 or 3 things up because I just didn't go ask. Now they're afraid. Has Jesus ever chastised them? Has he ever said, all right, you're going to bed with no food? He's not. So why would they be afraid? And he came to Capernaum, and being in the house, he asked them, what was it? Look here. What was it that you disputed among yourselves by the way? What was that y'all were talking about? See, he put them on the spot, didn't he? They thought, because it says they were by themselves, they understood not, they were afraid to ask. So Jesus says, all right, I'm going to put you on the spot. I'm going to ask you what you don't understand. But they held their peace. They didn't say anything. For by the way, they had disputed among themselves who should be the greatest. Who's going to be the leader of the disciples? Who do you think it would be? My instant thought would be Peter. I bet Peter gave the biggest fight. It's going to be me. And he sat down and called the 12 and said unto them, if any man desire to be first, the same shall be last of all, and servant of all. And he took a child and set him in the midst of them. And when he had taken him in his arms, he said unto them, whosoever shall receive one of such children in my name receiveth me. And whosoever shall receiveth me receiveth not me, but him that sent me. So if you receive Jesus, you're not really receiving Jesus, but you're receiving God. Right? That's what he's saying, right? Because God is the one that sent me. Jesus is here just carrying out God's will. And John answered him, saying, Master, we saw one casting out devils in thy name, and he followeth not us. And we forbade him, because he followeth not us. Okay, so there's somebody out there casting out demons, but he's not following the disciples or the multitude. And the disciples hear of it. Okay, say Mark is not in church. We don't know if Mark's saved. Mark's not following Pathway Fellowship. But now we hear, and we've got a big healing ministry going on here. People are coming and we're praying over them and they're getting healed. And they're leaving and they're made whole. But now we got Mark out there doing it, and he's not following us. So me and Norman, Michael, we're going to go over there because we're the trustees of the church. We're going to say, look here, son, you got to stop what you're doing. Don't do that anymore. You don't go with us, you don't do that. That's what's happened. I think they feel a threat. They know something's not right, but they maybe feel a threat here. So they forbid him. And Jesus said, forbid him not. Let him do it. For there is no man which shall do a miracle in my name that can lightly speak evil of me. For he that is not against us is on our part. He may not be with us, but if he's casting out demons, he's on our side. For whosoever shall give you a cup of water to drink in my name, because you belong to Christ, verily I say unto you, he shall not lose his reward. Do you think he's trying to teach them a little bit of unity here? Just because they're not in this church doesn't mean they can't work with us to carry out the will of God. We've seen it at churches before in Oh, it drives me crazy. There's and I understand there needs to be a proving period. I understand that, because I wouldn't want somebody to come in here off the streets and say, I'm a nursery director. Okay, well, we'll throw you right in the nursery. Well, come to find out, they're a convicted sex offender. Now, if I didn't prove them, whatever happens in that nursery, I'm guilty. I didn't do it, I'm guilty. But if somebody comes in here and says, look, I want to help in the kitchen, oh, you got to be here a year. You got to be here a year before you can, and this happened. You got to be here a year before you can work in the kitchen. You got to be here a year before you can do anything in this church. Where does it say that in the Bible? If God gives him a gift, let him use it. Whether they're with us or they're just a part of the family of God, use that gift, because God might have sent them to help out in that ministry. So Jesus says, he that is not against us is actually for us. For whosoever shall give you a cup of water to drink in my name, because you belong to Christ, verily I say unto you, he shall not lose his reward. Okay, so because you're a Christian, here, I know you like coffee, and because you're a Christian, I'm going to buy you this cup of coffee. Just because you're a Christian. Because I know you're working for the Lord, here's this cup of coffee. Or I know you don't have a car, and I know you're on a ministry for the Lord, take the keys to my car right here because you're a Christian. That's pretty bold, isn't it? That's what he's saying. I mean, he used a cup of water there. But when we do things because people are in the ministry, or in, not necessarily in the pastoral role, but in a ministry, because we belong to Christ, that's the only reason why we're doing it, he said that we'll not lose our reward. So basically, God's saying, help out those who are in the ministry, who are doing something for our cause. Don't look down upon them. If that little church across, right down the road there, if their pastor comes over here and says, look, we want to give you this. We don't need that. We want to give you this because we know that you're a church trying in this community. Take that mess on. We don't need that. And a lot of churches are like that. But what we should do is whatever they have, we should say thank you and take it. Whether we use it or not, it's been laid upon their heart to help out someone in the ministry, take it. They're just doing what God is leading them to do. The same way here. And whosoever shall offend one of these little ones that believe in me, it is better for him that a millstone was hanged about his neck and he were cast into the sea. So all those people who are against us, and it will only get worse here if we make it any longer, there will be those who will be against us. Jesus says it would be better for them to be drowned with a millstone tied around their neck than to offend a child of mine. Wow. I don't want to talk bad about any of God's children. And if thy hand offend thee, cut it off. For it is better for thee to enter into life maimed than having two hands to go into hell, into the fire that never shall be quenched. So he's not saying necessarily if my hand is causing me to sin to literally cut it off. He's saying to acknowledge the sin in your life and stay away from it, whatever it may be, because it says it'd be better to be maimed than to go into hell. Now, I don't want to walk around with one hand. I need both of mine. The clutch is on one side and the throttle's on the other. I need both of them. Not to mention you can't hammer a nail with one hand. Can you? Get somebody to hold it for you. But I ain't holding that nail. We need two hands. We need 2 feet. We need 2 eyes. We need 2 ears. I don't want to be maimed, But if I know something's causing a problem, it would be better for me just to cut it off than to face the consequences. It says, where their worm dieth not, and the fire is not quenched. And if thy foot offend thee, cut it off. For it is better for thee to enter halt into life, than having 2 feet to be cast into hell, into the fire that never shall be quenched. Whether their worm dieth and not, the fire is not quenched. And if thine eye offend thee, ooh, that's the big one. That's the big one. What does your hands usually do? Steal something, right? What do your feet usually do? Take you to a place you're not supposed to be. And if thy eye offend thee, pluck it out. How could your eye offend thee?
Well, you're looking at something that you know is wrong.
Fire.
Lust and desire, right? Now, if Miss Grace, if a whole bunch of Chippendale dancers came in here, Miss Grace would be like, woo woo. I'm kidding.
Are you?
I don't know. I see that blushing over there now.
Sorry, Grace.
But we would, all these ladies in here would be like, woohoo! And their eyes see it, and their mind takes them somewhere they're not supposed to be. That's what he's getting at. If your eye offends thee, because your eye leads to thoughts, it takes you to think about things, pluck it out. Now, I don't know about you, but I really don't want to plug out my eye. I need both of them. For it's better to enter the kingdom of God with one eye than having 2 eyes and be cast into hell fire, where the worm dieth not and the fire is not quenched. For every one shall be salted with fire, and every sacrifice shall be salted with salt. Salt is good, but if the salt has lost its saltness, wherewith shall you season it? Have salt in yourselves, and have peace with one another. We are supposed to be the salt of the earth. Right? The salt has some good traits. What does it do? It seasons, it's a preservative, and it's a cleansing agent. Salt is good, but if the salt loses its savor, it's no good. It may as well just have sand. That's what he's saying. We can't do these things. We can't let our hands, our feet, or our eyes offend us and still maintain the saltiness that we're supposed to have. And we got through 9. I'm not going to start 10. It's 5 o'clock. Any questions on 9?
The first verse of chapter 9, can you explain that? What does he mean by, some people will never taste death until the kingdom of God?
And he said unto them, Verily I say unto you, there shall be some of them that stand here, which shall not taste of death, till they have seen the kingdom of God come with power. I think he's talking about not necessarily the second coming, but the kingdom of God is coming. In just a few moments, as we read down, the kingdom of God is coming down upon Jesus in the transfiguration. And then also, the kingdom of God comes down at the crucifixion. So he may be, Miss Kay, I don't know that there's an exact answer to that. But I think he's talking about the kingdom of God coming at the transfiguration, and also the kingdom of God coming at the crucifixion and resurrection. That these people here will witness what's going on. And he could even be being prophetic in saying that there will be some that will be caught up, just like Enoch and Elijah. If the rapture happens right now, every one of us that are saved in this room, we won't die. We'll just be caught up into the air. 1 Thessalonians chapter 4 or 5. We'll be caught up into the air. We will not die. So I don't know if he's exactly speaking about the transfiguration here, the crucifixion and resurrection, or his second coming. Now we know that it can't be his second coming unless he's speaking prophetically, because Peter, James, and John are already dead. And everybody that was present when he made that statement, there's no doubt in my mind they're dead. And the only two that have been translated was Enoch and Elijah, and that had already happened. So he may be speaking prophetically, or he may be speaking about two specific events: the transfiguration or the crucifixion and resurrection. I'll see if I can do some research, more research, and find a more definitive answer, but I don't think that there is one, Ms. Kay.
My Bible was talking about the transfiguration.
At that moment. But it leads me to question, why would he say that if it's fixing to happen? I'm not saying that that's wrong, but why would he make that statement if it's something that's fixing to happen?
Because they're going to see it. Now, whether they recognize it or not is another, you know.
Yes, sir. Okay, I'm writing a note so I don't forget. See if we can figure that out by Wednesday.
Every time I read that, I could never figure out what he was saying. That's why I asked
Well, it
if
says
you
some of
understood
them,
what he was saying.
some of those that were standing there, well, the ones that were standing there and went with him was James and John, Peter.
Peter, James, and John.
Yeah.
So I don't know if he's talking about, because they all made it through that. Actually, there was a large multitude there. Because it was 6 days after he made that statement. Verse 2 says, and after 6 days,
6 days, yeah.
Jesus takes Peter, James, and John. So we don't know if he was necessarily just talking to Peter, James, and John, or everybody that was there. I believe we left off, he was teaching the disciples.
He says he brought them up on a high mountain by themselves.
Yeah, but that statement was made before the 6 days. You see what I'm saying? He made that statement, and I think he may have still been teaching the disciples. Verse 31, he began to teach, the Son of Man must suffer many things. So right now he's talking to the disciples. Remember, he's pulled them to the side, explaining what's going on. He asked them, who am I? Peter says, I am the Christ, and now he begins to teach them. It's just the disciples there. So he makes that statement in front of all the disciples, I believe. And then 6 days later, he takes Peter, James, and John to the mountain. So we'll find out if we can get a better, clearer answer. There may not be one. And that'll just have to be okay, well, I trust you, God. But I'll see what I can find. Any other thoughts?
Why did it take Jesus twice to do the blind man?
I think he was testing the blind man's faith to see if,
Chapter 9, verse 1.
because here's what I would think, in the flesh side of me. He's not really who he says he is. Yeah, I can see, but it's blurry. God would have made it all clear. But the man was comfortable with what he was given. And I think that because Jesus saw his comfortableness or his satisfaction in what Jesus had gave that blind man, that he went ahead and healed him the other way, completely. Now, wouldn't you? We've seen people who can't walk or get hurt in an accident, and you know, God restores them partially. But they said, well, some God, I mean, I can only walk halfway. You know, I don't have full use of my limb. Maybe God was testing them. Lord, I appreciate it. Thank you for the blessing of giving me partial use of this limb. Maybe it would have been a complete healing if they'd have said, Lord, thank you for that. I know that I'd like to have full use, but thank you for allowing me just to have partial use of it. That's, in my mind, that's what that man did. He was satisfied with what God had given him, and Jesus picked up on that and said, I'm going to go ahead and bestow all the healing upon you. He could have been left in that blurry vision had he been dissatisfied with what he'd been given.
Couldn't he be pushing the disciples too?
I think he's using it as a teaching experience too.
Because normally when Jesus healed anybody, there's always one time. Well, if you go through disciples, they're still, no matter what he's done, they're still doubting him. So here Jesus, he does half of it, and I'd say they're talking like, whoa, whoa, whoa. He's always done them as whole. What happened? You know, so they're still in doubt again. I don't think they ever get out of doubt.
They don't.
There's too many errors right there just like the baskets and all of that stuff,
Yep.
too many areas that they haven't got the full, but the thing about it is that it buffaloes me is, back when he come through, they dropped the nets and everything and left.
Immediately.
Immediately, they had faith there, but every time he does something, they don't have faith. What happened?
That's a good thought there, because they didn't know who he was. He walked by and said, "Come with me."
And they dropped it.
And they dropped everything. So now here they are experiencing all the things. He hadn't seen him do anything yet, so now here they are experiencing these things, and there's doubt. What happened? Did they get comfortable with who he was and begin to doubt? I don't know. But all I know is they are full of doubt, and I think that they stayed that way because you and I stay that way. I mean, there's no way every single one of us in this room have 100% faith. We doubt sometimes. I do. I know that God is going to take care of me. I know that He's going to provide for me. But man, some days you get up and you're like, where are you at, Lord? And I think when we make that statement, Lord, where are you at? We doubt that His presence is there. And that He says, I'll never leave you or forsake you. But we doubt that His presence is there. Man, when things just keep raining in my life, I'm, Lord, what's going on? I think that shows us a little bit of doubt, like He's not caring for me. And I know that He cares for me, constantly cares for me. But when that happens, I have that little bit of doubt. Lord, are you sure you're there? And maybe the disciples had gotten so comfortable with what He was doing and who He was that they began to doubt things because they got used to it. And now here they are. Here's this man. This man was satisfied. And the disciples were like, see, I told you. Look, that man can't see. I can hear him talking. They keep, look at it. He's still seeing blurry. He said it himself. We look like trees. Has he lost his mind? But then Jesus touched him again, like to drive the point home. Maybe not to the man, because the man was comfortable where he was at, but to drive that point home to the disciples. He is who He says He is. But as we continue to read, we'll see more doubt. We'll see more doubt throughout Scripture. Even after the resurrection, we'll see doubt. Even after Jesus ascends into heaven, we'll see doubt by the very same disciples that He sent out. Peter most of all. But that's a good sign for us because we know that we face that doubt. And Jesus still used those men to bring the gospel to this world. Doubt is a bad thing, but I think doubt helps our faith grow. Because I think in those moments of doubt, oftentimes God proves to us who He is to be that faith-building muscle or exercise, if you will. There's been times that I just didn't see a way out. And God's always provided. There's been times, there was a woman who used to go to church with us, and her husband he'd get paid on Friday and he'd drink it all. He'd drink it all away before Sunday. And there was 5 kids in that house. I mean, how was she supposed to buy groceries? But she never, ever lost her faith. She constantly, and her kids never went hungry. Now, I know that, and I know what happened. Don't know who it was, but she would go up and sing, and she'd leave her Bible on the seat where she was sitting, and she'd leave it open, and she'd come back, and her Bible would be closed, and she'd get home, and she'd open up the Bible, and there'd be some cash in there. And I know that God didn't rain down cash and put it in her Bible and close it, but God used somebody whoever it was in that congregation to provide for her need. She never, ever doubted. She'd get up and she'd give the greatest testimony, and she never told what her husband was doing. But she'd get up and give the greatest testimony. Y'all, you don't know how hard things are. But she says, I never gave up hope. And she never would say that somebody put the money in the Bible. Never would she say that. And she knew that somebody did, but she said, I know that God placed some money in my Bible and that my children were provided for. And she said, I knew when Sunday morning come and there wasn't no more money, when what's his name would come home and the wallet was empty, she said, I never doubted that we'd be provided for. Never doubted. Now, I don't know about you, but if my daddy drank away everything, I'd be worried Sunday morning when there wasn't no groceries for the week. Wouldn't you? But she never, and she always, I never saw her waver. Now, I'm not saying she didn't, but she never ever let on that she did not trust completely in God. And that was a powerful testimony. She's passed away now, but man, that woman, she was an example of what faith is. But yeah, the
We should
disciples.
all have that kind of faith.
We should.
Every
And
day.
we should. God proves it to us every day. Every day God proves it to us, but there's sometimes in those days that we do have that doubt. We do have that doubt, and we shouldn't. We shouldn't. Faith is a tough thing to understand and to demonstrate constantly, isn't it? I think so. All right, any more questions on 8 and 9? I never thought we'd get through 8, but we made it through 8 and 9. How about that? All right, so Sunday or Wednesday will be in chapter 10. We'll probably make it through 10. I don't know, maybe not. It's 52 verses, and it's Wednesday night, so we might. We'll shoot for a good stopping point. I'll try to make it, but at least half of 10. We might spend a little bit of time on the first part of that anyway. Any other questions? All right.